So you're on this,
Very delayed flight to Miami. Yeah. You?
Yeah.
Red Eye is about two people who meet one night very late in the airport, catching a red eye.
The story of Red Eye is sort of the worst plane ride you could ever take.
It takes place on the airplane. Everything is compressed, but that really contributes to the sense of kind of a claustrophobic, creeping terror.
It's this struggle, and it's all just contained within the coach section of the plane.
I think this is a story of the worst possible person you could sit next to on a plane. There's nowhere to go. I got this script and I read it over the weekend, and that Monday sent it to the studios, and I think they bought it a day later. Everyone read it and just said, yeah, this is a movie.
I was attracted to this project, first of all, for the script. The director can do nothing if he doesn't have a good script. And this script by Carl Ellsworth is just remarkably constructed. The characters are very complex. Just when you think you know what's going to happen, something else happens instead.
So, what are the odds, huh?
Yeah.
You're not stalking me, are you?
No.
The excitement for me is generated out of this very compelling conversation between these two individuals that starts off innocent enough, but then suddenly devolves. I was fascinated by the idea of, you never really know who you're going to sit next to on an airplane.
The element that I was most attracted to in the script was the psychological mind play between these two characters and what it is to have to sit in one spot and be terrorized and basically held hostage without letting anyone else know what's going on.
Let's break this down into a little male-driven, fact-based logic. One simple phone call saves your dad's life.
I was aware that it was a page-turner. It just compelled you to turn the page and see what was going to happen next. And I know from having done some films like that in the past that the scripts that make terrific films.
I wanted to do a character piece, and in a way I was thinking, well, can you maybe create a hybrid of sort of the independent character film meets your sort of Hollywood-esque action blockbuster. You can indeed have a character-driven piece, but also have those suspense, thriller, action elements in it as well.
Red Eye was filmed principally in Los Angeles. All of the airplane shots were on a set. There was no way in hell one could ever shoot this on a real airplane. So we had an airplane that we could take apart by sections. We could pull sections off of the side, and I had a sort of a crane gantry constructed along the top so we could pull out seating panels and have a camera kind of swoop down aisles and go up over people and come back down. And that was probably, I'd say, at least half of the shooting.
I think the production value and the sort of the look of the movie is they just wanted to keep it as real as possible.
If I do it, if I make that call, do you promise you'll tell whoever's outside my dad's house to go away?
You have a feeling that you're in this capsule at 30,000 feet in the air. There's one shot where you just see the plane, a very tiny little plane going through these huge cloud banks, and you have this feeling they're in this tiny ship in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of the old horror film thing of, all these things always happen in the middle of nowhere. And essentially when you're up in a plane, that's where you are. You're up completely removed from any sort of help.
You tell the flight attendant and your dad dies.
It's WES CRAVEN, and WES CRAVEN has that mark.
Well, the production designer was Bruce Miller, who's worked with me on many films.
I help the director create the scenes that he needs to tell the story.
He was the one that found the airplane for us. There was 2 or 3 rental places in Los Angeles, but he was able to get us into this set that really functioned well and had all the aspects of buttons and lights and everything that worked.
We decided to go with a 2-3-2 seating pattern, which is a 767 airplane. We took pieces from many airplanes and put them together into this format with the overhead baggage compartments, the lighting, the seats, various pieces from the various planes that we could rent or buy.
And then we had a very, very talented mechanical special effects guy, Ron Balanowski, who is, I think, a genius.
We built a deck that's 105 feet long and 24 feet wide. It has 50 airbags underneath it. And what it does is we air up the airbags and it lifts the deck about a foot off the ground. Then we have hydraulic rams connected to the side of the platform which shake it and make it look like turbulence.
Please return to your seats. Thank you.
The plane was really cool. It was so authentic. And to see it from the outside, it looked like this monster, especially when the hydraulics, were working and this plane is shifting. It was quite impressive.
Any time when I wanted to have the turbulence hit the plane, we were able to rock that plane from a mild bump to a wild roller coaster ride. It was a great combination of kind of production design and mechanical design. One of the biggest challenges of shooting Red Eye was to keep it interesting with the entire second act taking place on an airplane. I mean, after a while, how many different shots can you have of two people sitting next to each other? But there are several key moments where she's out of her seat. I spent a lot of time developing little extra moments with these characters. And also, there are just 2 or 3 times when we do very dramatic camera moves for the takeoff and for the moment when the storm comes in and Rachel is kind of rocked awake in order to make it just compelling.
Call your hotel. It's very simple. Just use your managerial pull to move Keith from 3825 to suite 4080. I'll leave the details to you. You just sell it.
You've got the wrong person. I don't have the authority to do that.
Well, I happen to know that you do, and I happen to know that you're the only voice that can get this done by the time I need it done.
The challenge of shooting on a plane comes from a couple different places. Just a 4-hour flight, it starts to feel real claustrophobic, so you can imagine what it's like after 6 weeks of sort of being in this really confined space. The other big issue with shooting on the plane was we had to keep a group of about 60 to 100 extras every day who, you know, were part of the cast, and they were there and they were in certain seats, and you know, they had to wear the same clothes every day and they had to sit next to the people. So it's sort of the movie but amplified of, you know, it's bad enough to have to sit next to some of these people for 4 hours. These people were stuck sitting next to the people for 6 weeks.
I thought when I first walked onto the set that I was going to go out of my mind being, you know, in one seat for, you know, months on end. But it actually became quite cozy. In the mornings it was really cold because you're, you know, on this big stage. So I had like an electric blanket I could crank up, and you know, it got quite comfortable.
The special effects in this movie are great. The biggest special effects is the explosion towards the end of the movie when Mr. Keefe is the target and a missile actually comes through the hotel lobby.
Cynthia, you have got to get Keefe out of that room.
You already changed him.
No, Cynthia, it's got nothing to... Look, I think something's gonna happen. Listen, pull the fire alarm.
My character is facilitating these guys who are trying to take out this guy, Keith. The explosion is them attempting to assassinate him. So they do it from a rocket from a boat. And you gotta have one good explosion in every film, don't you?
One of the key moments in the film is when the bad guys reveal what they're going to do to this man once they have him in this particular suite, which is a penthouse suite facing the ocean. Instead of attacking from the city or from within the hotel, they are going to hit the place where he is with essentially an anti-tank weapon, which is a shoulder-launched rocket. And we basically needed to have a rocket blast destroy the hotel room that they're in and the corridor just outside of it, with them barely escaping with their lives.
You've got to go up there now and physically tell them that Keith is a target. Cynthia, Keith is a target!
To do it, they emptied the stage. There was nobody on the stage except these 2 stunt guys and all of Ron's people. And we just sat outside for like an hour and a half waiting for it to either happen or not happen. And suddenly we were told to be silent, and all the fire marshals took their places, and there was this enormous wham, you know. The whole stage shook, and as soon as it was safe to go in, we went in, and the whole thing was completely devastated. But it was even pre-rigged so that when it was blown up, it looked like a hotel room that had been blown up instead of a set that had blown up. And we were able to go right in and shoot on that set the aftermath sequences. One take, everything went perfectly, nobody was hurt, and it looks spectacular. There's a very powerful scene in the restroom with the plane.
The scene in the airplane bathroom is quite confined and quite intense because it's the first time Lisa and Ripner are together after he's revealed his character, where no one else can see what's happening, and it's a free-for-all.
She has a great moment where her face is covered with tears, and she just pushes her hair back and says, "Get up."
Get up.
You know, it's like the turning point for that character, and she She gets up and washes her face, and she starts to make her first bid for getting somebody to help her by writing on the mirror. A moment later, she's about to leave and opens the door, and he's right there.
I was wondering.
Basically, we had this tiny little set, and we had a camera on a crane arm, so we didn't have to be in there with her. And she just really, literally falls apart.
I can't breathe.
Basically, we just turned her loose. I said, I'm not going to tell you how to do this, but just, let that emotion out.
Dad, a favor, and stop gambling with his life.
I would imagine the scene is maybe, I don't know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and it's just absolutely powerful, and it's the turning point of the movie.
Have you done something to my father?
No. And it'll stay that way as long as you keep playing along.
What is so powerful about this is that everybody flies nowadays. Everybody has to fly. And nobody knows who they're going to be sitting beside.
It's got that kind of classic Hitchcockian shark value. And suddenly there's a twist, and it's a series of twists.
It's exciting, it's thrilling, the performances are amazing, and there's some great action sequences in it. It's got some great jumps, some real laughs, and it's just a really fun kind of human experience, a very intense but fun roller coaster ride.
Ready and action.
I've always been in the horror genre, or at least known for that, and because of that, it's always been a wish to do things outside the genre. It wasn't like it was my lifelong dream to become a horror director, the scariest guy in the world. It just happens.
There is a man in my house who's trying to kill me.
When I read the script, I already knew Wes was going to direct it, so I read it knowing that it would be heightened by his style of directing.
I suppose this represents a different sort of movie for Wes in that it's very definitely a thriller.
It's not a slasher film, and it's not a horror film.
It seemed the most logical thing in the world to step out of it, literally step, rather than leap, would be to do like a thriller. There was nothing in the script that called for something as extreme as the physical horror of a horror film, which is all about the vulnerability of the body. This film was much more about the vulnerability of the soul. It's not that often that a really good thriller script comes across your desk.
Why are you doing this?
Somebody wants to send a big, brash message.
We worked on those little moments. We worked really hard on getting that right. And they're throughout the picture, but they're very quick and very subtle.
To have a master, a director like Wes Craven driving the boat here, I could not have asked for a better guy to do it.
Somebody called up and said, we have this script, first-time writer, but it's really good, check it out. And I was actually at the end of working a very long time on Cursed, the movie I did before Red Eye, and was pretty much exhausted and burnt out, and said, I want to go to an island someplace and disappear for a year, but okay, I'll read it. And it was just like, oh, juicy stuff. And then I was like, well, God, I have to do this. I'd be a fool not to.
Okay, so is this personal now?
Just finishing the job.
I think this is a good movie for Wes to direct because it's scary and it's horrific, but it's a real kind of horror.
He's so articulate and literate in the language of film and making an audience invest in characters and invest in what's going to happen with the characters.
The interesting thing about Red Eye is it's not just a thriller. It is almost like a little art film. The entire second act is not only on an airplane, but basically two people on the airplane just talking. So to make that work is a real trick.
So what do you do?
Government overthrows, flashy, high-profile assassinations, the usual.
Carl made it work with the dialogue.
I started to ask myself, can you sustain 2/3 of a movie with just two people sitting next to each other on an airplane? And the answer is yes.
When you have just two people in one space for such a long period of time, you really have to heighten the drama.
Okay, you know what? You got me. I'm gonna make that call when I can make the call. Right now, you gotta let me go. I need to go.
Okay. I trust you.
The characters were so intelligent, so full of emotion, so complexly drawn that it was like, well, if you as a director can get that onto film from the page, that's going to be a great accomplishment. It just felt like, wow, that's really rich material. The casting was interesting on Red Eye. Everybody instinctively felt like, you know what, this would be better if it was people that were really, really good but not that well known. It will make those characters real in a way that if they were played by somebody who's done a million different roles, would not be quite as real.
Well, you didn't know? You failed, Jack.
I'll finish the job.
Not in my house.
Killian's name came up. I had a conversation with him. He was in London. I was in Los Angeles. And, you know, here's this guy with this Irish brogue. Yes, I mean, I can't do Irish, but he was like saying, yes, I can do this. It'll be wonderful. He was so Irish to me. And this character was specifically written to be an American guy. And literally 2 days later, I heard, Killian's on an airplane. I said, what do you mean he's on an airplane? He's on an airplane. He's supposed to be married in 2 days, but he's on an airplane. He just wants to have lunch with you. Can you have lunch in... You know, and they listed the time that his plane was arriving. This young guy comes, you know, running up the stairs and just full of, you know, all this vim and enthusiasm and these blinding blue eyes, this incredible face that's handsome but also can be really kind of scary looking. And he just totally convinced me that he could do it.
The script was so strong. Originally when I read it, I mean, I was instantly taken by it, you know. It was funny because I read it on a plane, so that added to its effect.
What's wrong now?
You hit me on the head and slammed me against the wall, remember?
Well, suck it up.
With Rachel, there's this incredible young actress, Rachel McAdams. She was in Notebook, and then we went to see Mean Girls, and it's like, wow, she can just completely disappear into a role. Virtually unrecognizable from one to the other. Just the kind of person you think Lisa would be. She was clearly a very strong young woman who had opinions and had insights, and it was the end of like a 45-minute meeting and said, okay, you want to do it? I want to do it with you.
It's a cut! Cut!
Wes is very unique. He can find a look here, a glance there.
He knows the power of a look.
You can see, and when you get to know him in his mind, that he's adding up all of these looks and glances and thoughts, and how that's going to add up to be a very highly intense scene.
First stuff we shot was the airplane stuff, right into the just high tension, high power scenes, and bam, they both exploded, and they just did it. It was really quite amazing.
Wes is a legend.
He's so genuine, and he takes such an interest in everyone and in the movie. You can tell he really cares about it.
To be directed by Wes Craven is the best experience you could possibly have.
I think he's fantastic. He's one of the most relaxed people I've ever worked with. And he's a man who clearly knows his craft.
Brian nailed a character that you believe was the father of this young woman. The only thing I did that I think was reasonably clever is I said, Brian, the first time we kind of see you guys together, in the fact that she's speaking on a phone in Texas and you're back in Miami, she's just walking carrying her suitcase. And I had already shot her walk, so I knew where she cut right and left and everything else, and had him make the same cuts and turns and everything. So when you're cutting back and forth, they're unified just by this motion and this energy. So you feel like, yeah, that's her father, and that's where she gets that energy, and she's as strong as he is. I've watched it probably 100 times in the course of editing and watching it in screenings. I still find myself fascinated by it. I still find myself seeing things that I obviously at some point saw but have forgotten, and it has to do with performance.
Where's your male-driven, fact-based logic now, Jack?
When you work with somebody like Wes, you know you're in a perfectly safe pair of hands.
I'm sometimes referred to as an actor's director, and I think, you know, I do really enjoy working with actors and enjoy also sort of plucking people out from behind camera and saying, go over here and do this.
What is the problem here? We made these reservations over 6 months ago.
I know, ma'am, I'm just not seeing it.
Well, where's Lisa? Lisa always takes care of us.
Terry Press, who is head of marketing for DreamWorks, was in a meeting that we were invited to at the very beginning when we were talking about the film long before we shot, you know, how to promote it. We walked into this room and there's like 30 people in there. It was a huge boardroom crammed with all these marketing people, and it's all being run by this relatively short woman, very intense, clearly in control woman, Terry Press. And I was sitting there and I leaned over to Marianne Madalena, my producer, and I said, the irate customer. She says, what? Irate customer at the hotel, that's her.
You have any idea what we have been through? Our ceiling exploded. I got chunks of plaster all over me.
I could get asthma.
She says, yeah, she'd be like that. And I said, no, that's her. That's her. So I went up to her after the meeting, and I said, Terry, and I'd never met her before, I said, listen, we have a role I'd like you to do in the movie. There's, the customer at the hotel that's really kind of cranky and giving everybody a hard time, and that should be you. She said, yeah, right. And I said, no, really. And she just looked at me, and I think she just got it, like, oh my God, no, you wouldn't, no, I can't do that. Yes, you can.
Here's what you can do. You can fill out a comment card at our front desk.
A comment card?
She asked us to fill out a comment card.
You want us to fill out a comment card?
Yes, I do. And after you finish, you can go ahead and just shove it up your ass.
And it was really kind of wacky because, it's a big role. She opens the picture and she ends the picture, and she had a lot of lines, and I just kind of instinctively knew she could do it.
People love to be thrilled, don't they? People like to live kind of vicariously, so they like to see other people going through something that would terrify them.
First of all, we knew we had to have a PG-13, which is kind of unexplored territory for me in a way. I don't know where those boundaries are. And you have a central event in the film of somebody stabbing somebody in the throat, which is quite appalling visually, and yet you have to show it. How much can I show? And it turned out to be a matter of editing, and the fact that the review board actually, I think, looked at the picture as more of an adult work, and they allowed it to be shown, briefly, but shown. The whole last act, the fight with the hockey stick and everything, which was constructed late after we had shot the main body of the film, where she's going by the shower curtain. Half of the audience got to be thinking that he's in that shower, so I went around and actually put the camera in the shower for one shot where she's at the door. And I said to her, you can look anywhere, but don't look here. And you set that up, and that's pure horror film stuff, but it's fun.
Wes can find moments that, as an actor, you wouldn't necessarily see that will really add up to a suspenseful scene.
His skills and knowledge and experience as a filmmaker brought to a project like this is just a wonderful, huge bonus to an actor.
Don't move.
Actually, I was able to take the best, I think, of what I had used in horror films, which is suspense and surprises and kind of keeping people on the edge of their seats.